What up, YouTube? Welcome back. I am on a new show today. I am starting up a new, not a new channel, just a new show on my channel. I'm calling it Spoiler Alert. That should tell you everything that it's going to be about. I actually got requested to talk about movies. So I had a couple of my friends. We love films. We love going to the movies. We love watching them. And we love talking about them. So one of my friends actually hit me up on the phone and she was like, just in our last like 10-15 minute conversation about movies, you should really talk about movies on YouTube. You should throw that in your channel. And she said that she would definitely start watching more if I was to talk about movies. She loves to watch different movie reviews. And, she said her friends like to watch them too. So I decided, hey, why not? I'll give it a shot. I will talk about some movies and I'll give them my honest review. Now, I call it spoiler alert because there's going to be some spoilers. If I'm going to accurately, talk about the movies and talk about what I like, I'm going to have to give some things away. So I'm trying to give y'all some time before I do that. Usually I'll go to the movies and I watch them, like, especially if it's a movie I'm really, really into, like the one I'm talking about today. I'm going like, to the early release. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to the early release. I'm watching it the night before. I'm watching it the night before the weekend, so that I can be one of the first to know, because I gotta know, I gotta see it, you know what I'm saying? But without further ado, we're gonna hop into it. So this is episode 1 of Spoiler Alert. And what am I talking about today? I'm talking about that guy right there. I am talking about Spider-Man Brand New Day. Now, I hope a lot of you all have seen it by now. It's been out about 3 weeks or so, 2-3 weeks. Man, this was a really good movie. This was a really good movie. I gotta say, I enjoyed this movie as a whole. I enjoyed this movie. It was a nice refresher in terms of, the superhero movies. Both Marvel and DC, they've been kind of struggling lately with the superhero movies. I mean, Marvel's been doing okay, but, with some of their big time actors out, some of their movies have suffered. And I will say, this movie, it brought me back into the Marvel excitement. Pause. Brought me back to being excited about Marvel movies. What I liked about this Spider-Man movie, it brought the fun back into Spider-Man. I don't know if you all are hip to like the old Spider-Man cartoons or the comics, but Spider-Man is actually a really sarcastic and jokey and funny character. Like, as he fights crime, he talks shit about you. As he's beating you up, he talks about you. Or, as you're engaged in a fight with him, but the villains, as villains are engaged in a fight with him, he is talking crazy about them. And this was the kind of Spider-Man that we were experiencing. This was Tom Holland playing the Peter Parker that throws digs. And I really, really enjoyed that. I liked the wit that he had. And it added depth to his character. But also, it revealed some other things about Peter. Now, if you all watched Spider-Man No Way Home, at the end of the movie, Spider-Man, or Peter, asked Doctor Strange to cast a spell that makes everybody forget who he is, because it has been revealed that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. I'm not going to talk all about that movie because hopefully you all saw it. This movie, which is directly after that, shows us how Peter is spending his time now that nobody really knows who he is. Nobody knows that he's Spider-Man anymore. So he can be Spider-Man without worrying about his identity. But at the same time, nobody knows him. So Peter is by himself. And what I like about this is he's using his humor. He's using that sarcasm and that wit to kind of get him by. And I like that they used that sort of aspect to depict the battle that he's fighting within himself and the decision that he made to make everybody forget who he is. Peter is pretty much all on his own. Now, as Spider-Man, he was able to kind of make some allies with a police officer, and he kind of talks to her on his way to go and fight crimes and all of that. But otherwise, Peter is pretty much by himself. Like, he is living almost a completely solitary life. And he ends up watching all of his loved ones, Ned and MJ, kind of from afar. He's watching them through Instagram on his phone, all these other things as they go through their 4 years of college. And he's just kind of on the sideline doing his thing as Spider-Man. Now, he's doing his thing as Spider-Man, and he's got his own little thing going where he's, living up in the middle of nowhere in a shitty apartment. But at the same time, he doesn't have that balance. He doesn't have that dynamic. He doesn't have those best friends that he had before. So, Peter's basically living in his sad boy era. Peter is basically living in his sad boy era. And this dynamic causes him to start becoming overwhelmed. And you see that as he's fighting these different villains. He fights one villain in particular who I think was the catalyst to his realization that he's becoming overwhelmed. Spoiler alert, he goes on to fight against a villain who starts taking over people's bodies. Enter Jean Grey. Now, I really thought that this was an interesting pickup because when we think about Jean Grey, we think about X-Men. We don't think about her being the villain or the anti-hero, because I wouldn't necessarily call her the villain in this, but she was definitely the anti-hero. We don't think about her in that role at all until X-Men. So I really like that they brought her into this storyline. I also liked how they incorporated her and her powers, and they did so by making her more of a novice. Like, she's not the Jean Grey of X-Men. She's like Jean when Jean first is using her powers. Like, she can use them. She can use them pretty well, but she ain't X-Men level yet. She's not Omega level mutant yet. You know what I'm saying? So I like that aspect of it as well. So she's learning her powers, and in his fight with Jean Grey, she notices like, oh, you can see me. You can recognize what I'm doing. And she hops into other people's brains and makes them do her bidding. And Peter wasn't falling for none of that. Peter wasn't falling for none of that. And she tries to hop into Peter's brain, and he almost immediately kicks her out. And so she's like, wait, how are you doing that? No one else can do that to me. Once that happened, Peter's arachnid DNA starts to take over. Now, why is that important? Well, before, Peter's human DNA was primarily in control. Peter could control his powers. Once he loses control of his powers, that arachnid DNA starts going. Peter can't keep himself under control anymore. So Peter begins to lose control of his powers, most notably his web swinging ability. Now, before, this Peter, he is not like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. This Peter, he has to produce webs by using a web shooter. His web shooter starts going on the fritz. It actually becomes incompatible with him, and he has to quickly take them off because they started irritating him. And once he does that, he then sees oh, he can produce webs naturally on his own now. Peter goes to, web swing, and he just thinks, all right, cool, I can do what Toby did now. And he has no control. He has no control over it. So now he's struggling with his powers. The way Marvel did it, it was super fucking funny. It was super funny. There's this part, we get a classic scene where he goes to web shoot, and he's like, and it just oozes out. It just oozes out. Pause. Super pause. And then when he least expected, he's like, okay, so what just happened there? And then when he least expects it, it just starts shooting everywhere. Everywhere. And it was funny. Instagram can't take nothing serious. So there's a meme out there where, it's the little caption says, when you get 5 attachments from your girl, and then it's Peter with the oozing web, pause, and then it explodes everywhere, pause, super pause. But that's what we see. It was just funny, it's one of them comical things to keep the movie going, but it kept the crowd engaged, and it really shows us, okay, something's going on with Peter, man. Something is going on with Peter. Peter needs to get it together. You're going to have to figure this out if you're going to fight Jean Grey. If you're going to fight Jean Grey or if you're going to save the day, you're going to have to figure this out. But this shows the true struggle that Peter is going through with his decision to make everyone forget who he was. He no longer has that balance. So he's now spent the last 4 years pretty much only being Spider-Man. He hasn't had the chance to be Peter. And this is important. Why is this important? Well, it shows the importance of friendship. Your friends are there to be the buffer when you've got the rest of your life being hectic. You know, your friends are that place where you can go to relax, you can have peace, and you can reset. Peter doesn't have that. So it shows, you can't be effective if you're overworked. You got to have that time for yourself. You got to take that break. Like I said before, you got to reset. Peter doesn't get that at all. Peter doesn't get that at all, and he spent the last 4 years pretty much just being Spider-Man. The other interactions that he's had, it's been like, this here, this there, I went and got a coffee or something like that. He hasn't had that real camaraderie, that real companionship, and it's starting to show. That's why his arachnid DNA is taking over. Now, I thought it would have been very interesting if Marvel went the route to do like the comics did, and even the old animated cartoon did this, where Peter's arachnid DNA starts to take over, and Peter actually succumbs to the arachnid DNA because it fully takes over and turns him into Man Spider. I'm going to put up a graphic, but Man Spider was crazy. Like, Peter looks like a spider on 2 legs. And he actually, it's like if Peter was to go Hulk mode for real, but he has no human DNA really involved. So he is now a Man Spider, and he is just on the rampage. That would have been cool to see. And like I said before, I think it was interesting because it gives us this moment of like, well, where did this even start? You know what I'm saying? Is it truly because he's overworked? That's what some of the characters were saying. It's like, hey man, you got to take a break. You got to chill. You got to get some balance in your life. That's what the cop was telling Peter. But also, you really didn't see this type of overwhelmed behavior until after Jean Grey's first attempt to jump into Peter's mind. So that's like, okay, did she kind of start this off too? Peter was doing his thing. He was web swinging. He was beating all these villains, fairly easily. And then you get this big challenge coming in, and that's the catalyst to everything going on. So I thought that was interesting as well. And I like how Marvel did that. I like how they set it up for that. Because in the first 5-10 minutes of the movie, you really see Peter just rocking and rolling. It's like, okay, he's watching his friends from afar, so he can be like, all right, cool, I made the right decision. I let them go and live their lives, and won't. And then, boom, here comes this villain you can't even see who's taking over people's bodies. And when she does so, she knows their memory. She knows everything going on. And now she's trying to jump into your mind. She knows what's on your mind. And now you just overwhelmed and stressed. And then you got this rampant arachnid DNA taking over too. What's that going to do to you? One scene, Peter woke up in like a cocoon hanging outside. Like, it was crazy. So it was so much going on. And I like that for this movie. I thought, without them having like a true, arch nemesis or anything like that, they did pretty good with this. What was the next thing I liked? I really, really liked Spider-Man's acrobatics. Spider-Man's acrobatics was on point. I really felt like they did this true to Spider-Man form. There was a lot of acrobatics in the fighting, in the web swinging. Peter was at his full potential, so he was rocking and rolling. And I really liked the acrobatics after the arachnid DNA starts to take over. What we see Peter more aggressive. It reminded me of Spider-Man from the Tobey Maguire series, where he put on the symbiote. When Tobey Maguire put on the symbiote and he was just doing whatever he wanted, that's how Peter was when the arachnid DNA took over. So he's pretty much acting off instinct, not his own thought process. He's acting straight off his spidey senses. You know, he doesn't have full control over it. So we see him wild out a little bit. You know, he was fighting Scorpion, and at the time Jean Grey had took over Scorpion, and so Jean Grey's like, "Oh, you think that's who this is? You don't remember who I am?" And then Spider-Man's arachnid DNA takes over, and he almost crushes Scorpion's whole little suit in one move. He doesn't even pull punches, and it's like, okay, yeah, we about to watch Peter wild out. We about to watch him wild out. So I overall love the acrobatics, and I love the way that the movie paid homage to the Spider-Man video games as well as the cartoons. They took a lot of the video game action moments and they brought it to real life in this film. And I really liked how they paid homage to the cartoons by having Peter perform some of the moves that you see on the comic book covers or that you saw in the cartoon. He fought some of the villains who were on some of the comic book covers. They had the villains dressed up in similar ways. Or, you know, the scenes that were on the front page of the comic books, that's how you saw Peter beat those guys in the live action film. So I really enjoyed that part. I love when these movie companies or really just anybody, when they're doing something and they pay homage to where they got it from. I enjoy that. I like the nostalgia of it. It took us back to those moments, and you know, that brought me back to just being a little kid watching Spider-Man or reading Spider-Man. So it put that feel good in your heart. Now, who I knew he was going to be in the movie, but I did not expect his role to play out this way, was the Punisher. I personally love the Punisher. I love the Punisher. I love the grit. I love the attitude. And of course, the violence. The violence. I love it. But what I loved about the Punisher in this Spider-Man movie was the banter between the Punisher and Spider-Man. It was absolutely hilarious. And who knew that it was going to be so necessary? Who knew that we needed a funny Frank Castle? And what I really liked about it was it added a layer to the Punisher that we hadn't seen before. I mean, we heard him during his show where he was kind of witty, but it was always in that kind of like dark way. You know, we heard him in when he was with Daredevil in the Daredevil show and in the new show Born Again. Once again, just super dark and I want to kill everybody. Pause. But in this movie, he actually has some jokes for your ass. Like, he was talking shit back to Spider-Man. And one of my favorite moments actually from Punisher was when Jean Grey took over his mind and Punisher became super sassy. Like he was pause, super pause. But he had that teenage girl angst. And shout out to John Barenthal. He played that part exceptionally well. You know, I liked how Punisher had jokes for Spider-Man before and after his talk with Mary Jane. He could tell he was kind of stressed out about talking to Mary Jane. So he let him have it. And all that. So, and then after it was over, he let him have it again. I loved all of that. And then, you know, quick side note, after Jean took over his mind, she let him go and then she went and took over the Hulk. That didn't go well. But I loved watching the Punisher try to fight Hulk. Punisher was like, "No, Spider-Man, you got it. And then he starts shooting at Hulk, trying to help out. And he's like, "Man, nah, you know what? I ain't even gonna do it." Speaking of the Hulk, the Hulk was in this movie. And Spider-Man's fight with the Hulk, woo, it was nice. But I got to give it to Marvel again. They finally brought the Hulk kind of back into the Hulk glory. So Jean takes over the Hulk and she takes over his mind. It's like the Hulk from Endgame where he's more under Bruce Banner's control. So he's smaller. But then the Hulk kicks her out and he gets 3 times bigger. Hulk says, "No Banner, no girl, only Hulk." Woo! That's what we wanted to see. That's what we wanted to see. And we got to see the Hulk turn up. We got to see the Hulk turn all the way up. He had his little Hulk clap in there. We didn't see a gamma clap, but he had the Hulk clap in there. And this fight was amazing. Hulk was literally, there's a scene where Spider-Man developed a DNA suppressor, and he starts wearing it so that he can keep his arachnid DNA under control. He built another one to put onto Jean so that she can't jump into everybody's mind. He's like, okay, Evan, in his fight with the Hulk, I need to get this on the Hulk so that Bruce can come back because he is out of control right now. So he's in this fight with the Hulk. He's trying to put the thing on the Hulk. His skin's too thick, so he's like, nah. And the Hulk starts going ham. Well, Peter's like, all right, whatever. He starts web slinging them and sticking them to the building that they're in. Hulk turns up and pulls himself off the building. Web's still stuck to him. Pieces of the building just start to come out, and Hulk tries to fight Spider-Man with the building still attached to him. That's what I'm talking about. That's what we wanted to see. You can't see me slamming my hand on the table, but that's what we wanted to see. Hulk turning all the way up. All the way up. So I enjoyed that fight a lot. I thought it was cool. So in that scene also, Spider-Man has some little electric gloves on that he picks up from where they're fighting at. It was cool to watch him punch the Hulk with the electric gloves. Spider-Man almost lost that fight too. He almost lost that fight too. I won't get into how he won. I don't want to spoil everything, but he almost loses this fight. Hulk was back. Hulk was back, and I enjoyed every bit of that. All right, moving on to what else I liked. I like a lot of things about this movie, if you can't tell. But we had a lot of cameos. We had a lot of characters in here. I really, really liked when Spider goes to meet with the Black Widow. And I'm not talking about Scarlett Johansson. I'm talking about Yelena. Everybody loves Yelena. I'm not gonna lie. And this was another funny moment in the movie, but I'm not gonna lie. She might be a better Black Widow than ScarJo. I might just have to put it out there. I think she's funnier. I think she's funnier. Maybe not wittier, but I think with her character, I think with her accent and just the way that she presents on screen, I think what she tries to do from her sarcastic and just kind of witty banter moments, I think it lands better. But she was funny as hell. So there's a scene, and you probably seen it on Instagram if you haven't, but there's a scene where she makes Peter get into the hot tub with her, and she's like, yeah, step into my office. And she makes Peter get in pretty much butt ass naked. And she was telling him, like, okay, I got to make sure you ain't got no listening devices on or nothing. So Peter starts telling her what's going on. And she's like, oh, this sounds like a you problem, brother. This isn't big enough for the new Avengers. First of all, y'all, if anybody's seen Thunderbolt, Yelena becomes part of the new Avengers. And I'm like, man, if you don't get out Avengers Group B. But she was funny. She was hilarious. I just thought, that was a good person to have in the movie. She kept it engaging, kept the movie going. I like how Marvel did that. There were some points where in the movie it didn't get slow, but all movies have that natural downturn when things are trying to get figured out, problems trying to get solved. She helped boost it back up in that little moment of, okay, I need to figure out what's going on. To talk about what we have all been wondering since Spider-Man makes the deal with Doctor Strange. When he makes the deal for everybody to forget who he was. Spider-Man reunites with MJ. That's the moment we were all waiting for. Kind of. It starts with Peter seeing her in a coffee shop where she works after graduating college. He took the note with him to read to her, and in true Peter Parker fashion, he pusses out on reading the note. He doesn't do it. He just orders a cup of coffee like a no, I'm just playing. Like a beta. He then shows up to a house party that Ned is throwing. And this is where the sad boy gets into full effect. He done brought some flowers for MJ. He done brought something for Ned. Man, and then he's standing there. MJ takes the flowers. She's going to put them in a vase. And what happens? What we all knew was going to happen. MJ got a new man. MJ got a new man, and Peter hits the sad boy 1000. Peter hits sad boy level 1000. And it is what it is, bruh. You had to realize that you made that wish, so of course she's not gonna know who you are. And then you ain't talked to her in 4 years. Of course she got a new man, brother. Like, that was the point in the movie where I'm like, and you're surprised. I mean, I know it stings. I know it hurts. But like, come on, really? And it's cool, whatever. But then later on in the movie, Peter and Jean Grey have a race over MJ. Now, this turns out to be one of the funniest moments in the movie. One, because of the way that they depict Jean Grey hopping into people's bodies. It's very exaggerated, where people just kind of flying all over the place like that and falling and all of this. But also, Peter's arachnid DNA is taking over again during this race to save MJ. So Peter's trying to web sling and all these other things. He's falling into buildings, crashing into a wedding cake, disturbing people's weddings. All sorts of crazy things are happening in this race for him to save MJ. When he finally gets to MJ, Peter made up some clever move where he thought he trapped Jean, and he gets to MJ. And this is where it gets super dark and spooky. Marvel tricked us all into thinking MJ remembers who Peter is and professes her love for him. And Peter, he takes off the mask. He's like, oh, MJ, you remember, like, oh my God, like, won't they about to kiss? And then boom, bring on the creepy music. The rug is pulled out from under Peter and us all as Jean Grey reveals that Peter was in fact too slow, and she was the one who took over MJ's mind. And she kind of gave the full blow where she's like, yeah, I can see her memories. You ain't in here, dog. You are not in here, dog. And I mean, it crushed Peter's soul. And I'm not gonna lie, they did my boy dirty with that scene. But it was well timed. It was very well timed. Perfect spot in the movie. And it had us all going. I was like, hey, Peter about to get his girl back. And then boom. And I'm like, oh. And it made you feel the same emotion that Peter felt. Peter was about to whoop MJ's butt. Let's just put it that way. Peter was about to put hands on MJ, and he had to remember, wait, this is Jean in her body. Let me not. But whew, we all felt that one. So the next part that I liked was actually directly after that. Peter takes MJ to the Punisher's hideout, and while Peter and the Punisher are out fighting the Hulk, MJ discovers the letter that Peter wrote. And what do we get from that? We get Sad Boy 2000 Spider-Man after the I don't love you speech. Oh, crushing blow, Peter, crushing. And this scene actually threw us all into a frenzy because we're like, we know Peter is Spider-Man. We know the history as the audience. We know the history of what happened between the two of them. We got to remember, Peter wished that their memories be gone. So she hit him with the I don't love you speech because she like, I don't know you. You erased my memories. So great job because they gone. And this actually caused a lot of uproar for the audience. I mean, I actually heard people screaming out during this part, not only because of the I don't love you speech, but what did Marvel do in comedic fashion? After the I don't love you speech, MJ asked for a ride home. Like, what? You just told me that you don't love me, and now you want me to web swing you home? Oh, the salt was real. I felt how Peter felt in that moment. I was like, you're going to take her home because you love the girl and you are a gentleman and a nice guy. But you are not about to enjoy not one swing of this ride home. And that is exactly what happened. Peter was salty, and it was in a point where the arachnid DNA is still taking over. So Peter just now kind of got the hang of web swinging again, And now I gotta take you home and be mad about it and not let you know that I don't know what I'm doing no more. Oh my gosh. Now, this actually sent the internet into a frenzy too. There's some videos of dudes getting up and leaving for a second out the movie, or they was talking about the scene afterwards. It's funny. Go and watch them. But man, this and if you took your girl to the movie, it was now a Team Peter versus Team MJ moment between you and your girl. Your girl be like, "Oh, you wouldn't take her home?" All the dudes was like, "Hell no." Hell no. You just told me you don't love me and now you asking for a ride. You got feet. You got a bus pass. You better call Uber. Look, I'm not here to pick sides, but I'm not gonna lie. I'm Team Peter all the way. I'm Team Peter all the way. I think he should have seen it coming because you got to realize you asked for all the memories to be erased. So you got to see it coming. But at the same time, that don't make it hurt no less. So I get you. I'm Team Peter. Y'all let me know what team y'all on in that one. But I do want to say, shout out to Zendaya for her performance in these parts of the role. There was a lot of duality in these parts of the role. There was a lot of switching between sides, especially in that first one where Jean took over her body. Man, she played that part. And she was very convincing. That's what I really like. So shout out to Zendaya for her performance in that role. And I also want to say shout out to Tom Holland as well. I think that this was his best overall performance as Peter Parker and Spider-Man. I don't think it was the best movie. I think I like No Way Home just a little bit better, only because he had his Green Goblin moment and Willem Dafoe was balling in that movie. But this movie was very good, and I think it was Zendaya's best performance in terms of her performance in the Spider-Man movie, and also Tom Holland's. He was exceptional. So I wanted to just say shout out to them for that. This part I had some mixed feelings about, and that is when Jean Grey reaches her full potential after being captured and experimented on. So Jean realizes that the mysterious VMAX message from her sister was just a moment in time where her sister was getting experimented on by damage control. And the reason I didn't like this scene, so I did this scene, I was like, oh, this kind of corny. The reason I didn't like this scene was because they basically told the actress, it was the same actress who played Max in Stranger Things. And they basically told her, do what you did from Stranger Things when Vecna took over your mind. And it was just her like lean back in the chair like this with this goofy face on. And I was like, bro, this ain't Stranger Things no more. Give me something new. Give me something else. I didn't like that part. So I was like, we not bringing Stranger Things to Spider-Man. I'm cool on that. That was the only part I really didn't like about that whole scene. I was like, yeah, whatever. Next thing you know, you're going to hear the Vecna noise and the one little 80s song. I'm cool. But I did like the girl who was playing Jean Grey. She was pretty cool. What we see Jean's power reach a new height after she finds out what happened to her sister because of damage control. So then she shoots out this huge like dome of telepathic energy, and she starts taking over everybody's mind, and she makes them all freeze. Now, during this moment, Spider-Man's trying to come back and save her. And she realizes that she's taking over a bunch of people's mind. And she's like, nah, I don't need saving. I'm about to destroy damage control and, be on my way. And Spider-Man's like, I can't let you do that. Jean Grey delivers this really intense speech to Spider-Man, telling him about how he has to choose between being Peter or being Spider-Man. She's like, you're going to have to make a choice. You're going to have to choose because you're not going to be able to beat me while you wear that suppressor. Remember, he's got that suppressor on so that his human DNA can be more under control than the arachnid DNA. And so Peter has to make a decision. What I liked about this part is Peter has a moment with himself and he finally understands that he can have duality in his life. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. He learns that he has to accept himself for who he is, and that includes both sides of himself, both him being Peter and him being Spider-Man. And he has to make room for both. He has to give both accurate amount of time so that he can have balance in his life and things like that. So he comes to the realization that these sides of himself, they are complementary and not oppositional to each other. This realization allows him to finally utilize his arachnid DNA to its full potential and control his powers. And this is where we see the scene from the commercial where he's fighting against the hand, and we see the cool spider webs just shoot everywhere. We see even more acrobatics. We see him not pull his punches as much. And we see Spider-Man being full on Spider-Man, but he's fighting his foes effortlessly. And he goes on to do that up to the point where he goes to save Jean. Now, spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Peter gets hospitalized. This is like a great ending. He gets hospitalized. I'm not going to tell you who did it. I don't want to spoil everything. I feel like I told basically the whole movie in 45 minutes. But Peter gets hospitalized. But what I liked is the crowd comes to cheer for his recovery. There was a moment during the movie where Peter went a little bit too far because of his arachnid DNA, and it started to scare people, you know. But now they remember Spider-Man is a hero. He saved the day, and now everybody is coming to cheer him on. And this is just, one of those heartfelt moments because he survives. Everybody is back to loving Spider-Man again. Now, insert the Punisher again. The Punisher has a great moment at the end here because he helps Peter get out of the hospital without being recognized. Everybody's waiting at the hospital for him to walk out the doors, and the Punisher finishes the movie as a Spider-Man variant. That's how I'm gonna put it. He finishes the movie as a Spider-Man variant. It's funny as hell, but he helps Peter get out of the hospital without being recognized. And in this scene is very important because I don't know if I would call it an Easter egg, but they low-key foreshadow some things. They might have introduced Miles Morales. So in that scene, there's a little kid. He's sitting on his dad's shoulders. They're both cheering on Spider-Man. The little kid notices Peter in the crowd and gives him a little signal, almost like he knows. Almost like he knows. They say kids notice things before anybody else does. So it's almost like he knows. And then Peter gives him a little signal back. And then that's it. Maybe that was a little introduction of Miles Morales. Maybe not. Who knows? It could have just been a little kid. But I like to speculate. So I'm all for it. I'm all for it. If that was it, kudos to Marvel, because that was a great way to, drop that little hint. Now, final thing that I like, the handshake that brings back memories. Peter runs into Ned in a coffee shop, and they kind of acknowledge each other. Ned's like, "Oh, yeah, you were the weird dude at my party." And Peter's like, "Yeah, well, my real name's Peter, this and this." Ned still doesn't know who Peter is to him. So then, as they're reintroducing themselves, Peter goes in for a handshake. And he actually starts to do their secret handshake that they built with each other. And Ned, on some Jason Bourne type stuff, starts to do it, instinctively back. And as he finishes doing the handshake with Peter, his memories are sparked back and they start to remember each other, and he starts recognizing Peter. So I really like that because Peter was missing Ned, man. Peter was missing Ned, man, and we needed that to happen. We needed them to recognize each other. We needed that reconciliation. So I really enjoyed that part as well. That was my breakdown of the movie. Those are my spoiler alerts. I apologize. I probably gave away pretty much the whole movie, but I really enjoyed this. Y'all let me know what y'all thought if you've seen Spider-Man and if you decided to watch all 47 minutes of this video. But there's just a couple of other things that I was interested in. So here's where I got some questions, right? So first, with Jean Grey. When Jean Grey imprinted on everybody's mind, did that cause Doctor Strange's spell to become unlocked? When she imprinted on everybody's mind, it was large enough to where she got into MJ's mind and Ned's because it reached their apartment. And so I'm wondering if that scene where Peter's doing the handshake with Ned, was that the catalyst for him getting his memories back? And then did the same thing happen to MJ? There's a scene at the end of the movie where we see MJ kind of fidgeting with the necklace that Peter gave her, and then she's sitting on their rooftop spot. So maybe she's starting to remember. Maybe some things are getting jogged in her memory. Who knows? They didn't go much further with that point. So maybe that's for the next movie. We will see. Hopefully it'll be a little bit sooner than 4 years. I'd like to see a new Spider-Man movie maybe in the next like 2. That'd be cool, but who knows? We will see. But that's it for me. That's what I got on the Spider-Man movie. Shout out to everybody. Thank you for watching. This is the first episode of Spoiler Alert. I'm going to do some other ones. I think my next one is going to be over the Avatar movie that just dropped on Paramount Plus. So I'm giving y'all a heads up because I'm going to talk about that one next. So go and watch it so that my spoilers aren't really spoilers. But if you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe. Drop your thoughts, man. I wanna engage with people. Tell me what y'all think. Tell me what y'all think about some of the conspiracies or whatever, what you think some of the theories are. Let's talk about them. Thank you very much to everybody who tuned in. Thank you to all my subscribers. If you haven't yet, please do so. But we working over here, and I will catch y'all on the next one. Peace.